Good evening. It's late afternoon, evening time on Neptune, in Neptune City, late October, year 2020. Temperature here dropped a good 25 degrees in the last 2 days. Had some very strong winds, but tonight is calm, and so am I. And I'm here to speak about one of my all time favorite artists, Roxy Music, Bryan Ferry, Brian Eno, a little bit of David Bowie thrown in there too. I'm going to start with this book, which I got from Home of the Hits, independent record store in Buffalo, New York. Sometime in the 80s, mid 80s, it would have been. This is a book about Bryan Ferry, the singer. There he is, and his group, Roxy Music. Pre-internet, it was hard to find information a lot of times about your favorite groups, especially if they were non-mainstream, which Roxy Music was and to some extent still is. But this book was printed, or I guess published in England, says there, in Kent, printed in Italy, so it was an import from 1982. And this was the most information I ever had at that point about this group that I'd started listening to and found so amazing. And really like this artifact of the old days. And then also, this is a much newer book, but this is a book called Shock and Awe about glam rock, and Roxy Music, at least at their beginning, was considered a glam rock group. You can see the names of the artists, some of them here that are discussed: Bowie, Alice Cooper, T-Rex, New York Dolls, Roxy Music, and so forth. This is an excellent, very, very detailed book, published in 2016 by this English journalist, Simon Reynolds. And even though I already knew a lot about most of these artists, I learned a whole lot more by reading this book. It was really good. And just in reading his credits here, about 10 minutes ago, I saw that he had also written this book, which I have here. And it's about the post-punk era, right? 78 to 84, the time when the punks kind of turned into post-punks. See some names there. So Reynolds has two great books, at least, both in my collection. Okay, so with Roxy Music, this is their first album. They began their career in 1971. No, two, it says here. All of these CDs that I have were reissued in the mid-80s, so that's why there's that copyright date there, but 72 is the original release date of this first Roxy Music album. And their sound here, on this end, their second album, For Your Pleasure, are very different from the Roxy Music that most, I think, casual fans recognize, and that would be from the Avalon era, their last album. But at the beginning, they were a glam rock group. You can tell by their look here. There's Bryan Ferry, almost unrecognizable. And here's the other guys in the group. There's the drummer, Paul Thompson, excellent drummer. I think almost completely unknown by mainstream rock fans, but he was on all 5 of their original albums and has reunited with Bryan Ferry over the years too. He's just a solid drummer. Nothing fancy about him, but just very much a part of the sound. And then here's Andrew McKay, horn player. There's Brian Eno, almost unrecognizable as well, from what he looks like today. He was not a musician, famously. He manipulated the sound by using early versions of synthesizers and tape decks and all kinds of advanced electronics for its time. And he was only with Roxy Music for their first 2 albums. Then he went on to his own solo career, which I'll discuss shortly. And then here's Phil Manzanera. Again, a guitar player extraordinaire, but almost entirely unknown, I think, by most mainstream rock fans today. Really, it was Manzanera, McKay, and Ferry that were the 3 constants that were on every single Roxy Music release through the 70s and 80s. Bryan Ferry has a background in art. He studied art. He has a degree in art, actually, in fine arts. And he studied in England with a famous artist named Richard Hamilton, who's a pop artist, famous for collages mainly. But you can see the pop art influence all through Roxy Music. This is a kind of a 50s style pinup. Ferry said, he jokingly, at the beginning of their career, when this album came out, Ferry said that they planned to just release every album with this exact same model, but just showing her advancing in years, year after year, just have the same model, and show her as she aged. Bizarre kind of concept there, but indicative of the humor of Roxy Music and of Bryan Ferry. These songs are all over the place. Ladytron is an excellent proto-electronic type song. There's some straight-ahead pop songs. 2HB is a Humphrey Bogart tribute. Chance Meeting, a straight-up ballad. Would You Believe, a kind of throwback sounding song. So very adventuresome right from the start with their sound. And I always laugh a little bit when I see old CDs. Younger folks looking at this might not ever have seen this, but when CDs first came out in the early 80s, and for several years after that, there would always be this page in 4 different languages, German, French, Italian, and English, to explain just what this weird thing was. A small, convenient sound carrier unit, superior performance, digital playback, the codes there. Here's how to clean it. And it will provide a lifetime of pure listening enjoyment. That's how exotic these things were as they replaced the LP. So that was Roxy Music's self-titled first album from 72. Okay, and then here's their follow-up called For Your Pleasure from next year, 73. The 70s were an extraordinarily productive time period for Roxy and Bryan Ferry and Brian Eno too. During that time, they released 1 or more albums each year. And so here, 1 year after their debut, another album. The sound is fairly similar to the first album. A lot of different types of music here, although a little bit tighter, I would say, a little bit less experimental than some of the songs on this one. For example, the Bob medley is a little weird, so is Bitter's End. These are a little bit more of the traditional pop structures, but still, Brian Eno is still in the band, so a lot of experimental sounds too. In every Dream Home a Heartache, all-time classic Roxy Music song. I've always loved these 2 songs, Beauty Queen and Grey Lagoons. Deep cuts, but just gorgeous, romantic, kind of mid-tempo songs. Do the Strand was the big single from this album, and that as early as 73, you could already hear the influence that they would have on virtually every new wave group that followed. talking about groups like the Cars and Duran Duran. You can definitely hear Roxy music in them and a whole lot more. So this is a great album, great cover too. Here's Brian jaunty in his chauffeur's uniform. And then here's the glamorous model here walking the Black Panther. So Roxy became famous very quickly for putting beautiful models, very glamorous looking things on their covers. And this is a classic, iconic Roxy Music group portrait where they're done up in various retro-inspired gear. There's Bryan Ferry there. Manzanera. He always kind of looked the same. Here's Eno. He's the outlier in the group, as unusual as these jumpsuited guys look. Eno really steals the show here, I think. And there's McKay and Paul Thompson. Here's another look at their visual aesthetic. And then I'm going to alternate now because starting in 73, Bryan Ferry started releasing his own solo albums, and they would kind of alternate. There'd be a Roxy Music album and a Bryan Ferry solo album almost every year in subsequent years. So here's Bryan Ferry's debut solo album from 73. It's all covers, many of which are extremely well known, most of which are, I guess, too. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Bryan Ferry's a hardcore Bob Dylan fan, and you'll see that as I work through the rest of the collection. But his very first song on his first solo album is A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and it's arranged in a what I would call an almost Vegas-style arrangement. You really have to hear it. You also see here Sympathy for the Devil, completely reworked and rearranged from the Rolling Stones version. And you can see also some Motown covers. That's the Janis Joplin song. Leslie Gore here, Beach Boys. Even this song, the title song, These Foolish Things, I think dates back to the 40s. Loving You Sweeter Than Ever, Stevie Wonder song. Paul Thompson, the drummer of Roxy Music, plays on this whole album, and on this song in particular, you can hear how great he is as he bangs out this amazing song. I've always loved covers. To me, hearing an artist perform a song that you're already familiar with from another artist is a great way of kind of comparing and contrasting and seeing the creativity that an artist can bring to something that you already know and love. So Bryan Ferry, although this album came out when I got this album, I should say, when I was in college, came out when I was 6. This is one of the things that really stoked my interest in covers, because I knew almost all of these songs coming into this. So hearing Ferry's versions really opened my eyes in various different ways. And with that, I'm going to segue to David Bowie, because in the same year, 1973, as Bryan Ferry's first solo album, came out this album called Pin-Ups by David Bowie, and this is burned from iTunes. This is also all covers. Most of these are a bit more obscure than the ones that Ferry picked, although I can't explain. Is the Who song Don't Bring Me Down is the song made famous by the Animals. Anyhow, anywhere, also Who song. Where Have All the Good Times Gone, a Kinks song, later done by Van Halen. See Emily Play, a Pink Floyd song. Here Comes the Night. I forget the original artist, but that's an iconic old tune. So, Friday on My Mind was an English pop tune. Anyway, Bowie and Roxy Music overlapped to some extent by being rooted in the glam rock era, but both of them also kind of quickly grew out of it and expanded their sound more than what they started out with, which makes sense because they're both great artists. So here's Bowie's Pinups from '73, and then I don't have the year of Aladdin Sane. It was only a year or two after that, I think, though, that he came out with this album, kind of in the same vein as the Ziggy Stardust era, although kind of a different character. And to me, Aladdin Sane is a better album than the Ziggy Stardust album, which I don't have a copy of because I've heard it and I don't love it. These are better songs, I think, and this includes a portion of a live set too. And of course, this cover has become iconic. The lightning bolt image over the face is instantly recognizable as a Bowie trademark. Soon after that, I believe the year is, I'm going to say 76. It's not on the back of this, but this is Station to Station. And here is the original CD. And then this is a complete set, CDs 2 and 3, live in Nassau Coliseum at 76. These are all just amazing songs. It's the only real special edition Bowie that I have. All the other ones are iTunes downloads. I do have a picture disc of Scary Monsters, which I show in that video. This I just discovered is available on streaming services in its entirety, this concert, and it's spectacular. This is in what's often called his Thin White Duke era because of his look. Liner notes. Okay, what is this? While you're out. Okay, I don't know what the hell that's about, but this is an awesome album by David Bowie, Station to Station. And then after that commenced his famous Berlin trilogy, so named because he recorded most of this music in Berlin with Brian Eno as a producer, so there's our first overlap, I guess. Brian Eno added a lot of atmospherics to Bowie's sound. So this is the first of the 3 low, I think. Gonna say 77 on this, possibly-ish. This is back when I was still making my own labels. So I found what I thought was an evocative industrial landscape for this. Interesting thing, I added Blue Jean to that. That's not on the original album. But about half of this album is instrumental, including I think number 8, maybe 8 through 11 could be the instrumentals. Very, very much Eno influenced. And then these are some of Bowie's best songs: Speed of Life, Sound and Vision, Be My Wife. Fantastic stuff there. And then this is Heroes, beloved by all for the title song, but everything else is great too. This also I made myself. I think I actually took this picture myself, if I'm not mistaken, of a skyscraper in New York City. You can hear the new wave being born on these albums too. Is the third in the trilogy from Berlin. It's called Lodger. And this one, Boys Keep Swinging, African Night Flight. Okay, all 3 albums again, produced with Eno, and my own label there. Some European cityscape. So you can't go wrong with those Bowie albums. Then leaping forward a little bit, I have this, I believe this is his biggest seller. Whoops, holy cow, what did I do here? Alright, I was in a weird mood when I did this. This has got nothing to do with David Bowie. I just like the image. It's from TMZ. Boob Skank. I bet if you Google Boob Skank, you'll find this girl. Alright, but the music is some of Bowie's best known here. Not produced with Eno, produced with Nile Rodgers from Chic. Also around the same time, Nile Rodgers produced Madonna's Like a Virgin album. Also hugely successful. So, great album of Bowie's there. And then leaping way forward to the next day. This was part of Bowie's very, very late career, kind of renaissance in a way. Frankly, a lot of his work through the 90s and early 2000s was not as compelling as most of the rest of it, for me anyways, as well as I think for a lot of others. But starting just a couple of years before his death, he started putting out some really amazing new music, stuff that didn't sound really like any of his other stuff, but at the same time was entirely in keeping with the Bowie vibe. So this next day is not his last album. I believe that was called Black Star, but it's similar to it in its mood and approach and vibe. And I really just like how he's got the covers here. This is Heroes, and here's the next day. It appears to be the identical cover, just a white square over it, as if he's saying, I don't know, he's turned the page. Of course, he released the two albums a good 30 years apart from each other, so maybe it was just a conscious attempt to break with his past. I don't know. Bowie was always adventuresome, always interesting, and the few albums that I have of his here are not indicative of my admiration for him. He's great all the way through, really. But that was a detour because of the covers album that he did, Pinups, coming out the same year as Bryan Ferry's These Foolish Things. Just to recap. So now back to Roxy Music. Their third album is called Stranded. And this one also dated 1973. And so by this time, Eno had moved on, and really Ferry had kind of taken control of the musical direction of the band. Wrote, I think, all the lyrics to the songs, and wrote or co-wrote most of the music. This is a great, some great hard rock songs on here. Street Life and Serenade have particularly good hard drums by Paul Thompson. Just Like You is a beautiful ballad. Amazona is a freaky, phased out guitar, weird sounding song. Psalm is just what it sounds like. It's a hymn. It's a slow building hymn with a choir and an organ and everything. It sounds amazing. Song for Europe is one of my all-time favorite Roxy Music songs. It starts off about the first 2 minutes as a trashy, new wavy sounding song, and then morphs into this amazingly poetic and romantic song, all the way through Ferry's excellent singing. That's Mother of Pearl. A Song for Europe is a song that was entered into the famous Eurovision contest, where each country submits a song that represents something about Europe. I know ABBA won one year for their song Waterloo. I don't think Roxy Music won for A Song for Europe, but it's still a great song. And Sunset is just like it sounds. It's the end. It's a moody end of an album. Long, drawn-out, slow song. So here's the group here. They subtracted Brian Eno, and I added this guy, Eddie Jobson, who was completely the opposite of Eno in terms of his musicianship. Eddie Jobson's a genius musician and plays violin. Violin, synthesizer, and keyboards. He was really a virtuoso guy who added a lot to the Roxy music sound. In this cover, again, the very sensual, provocative cover of this woman in the jungle. This album, Stranded. This is the only one I have an LP of still. I used to have all of the Roxy music albums on LP. Back when I first started hearing them in the 80s, all the CDs that I'm showing I replaced in the 90s. Replaced those old LPs that by then I had lost track of, or probably sold. There was a big album purge as I was moving around a lot. And I knew that I would get that music again. But this is a reissue. It's not from the original era, so there you see the same gatefold as the CD, only a lot bigger. And this one includes a poster, a full-size poster of that cover, suitable for framing. I'm just curious what the label looks like. Oh, it's the old Virgin. Okay, so they were on Virgin Records when they started. Alright, so there is Stranded. Next up in 1974 is Bryan Ferry's second solo album. This one is called Another Time, Another Place. Love this cover, how could you not? Bryan Ferry in a dinner jacket, holding a cigarette, poolside. The glamorous crowd behind him. And this one is broken from being played so much. Oh, there he is in his relaxed yet elegant mode. This album, like the first one, consisted of covers except for the very last song. The title song is original by Bryan Ferry, and it's a great song. Sounds exactly like a Cars song. And then all these other ones are very, very well known. I really love his version of You Are My Sunshine. It's that song. My only sunshine, make me happy, blah, blah, blah. What a Wonderful World, the Sam Cooke song, another Bob Dylan song. Great version of the In Crowd. So, top-notch Bryan Ferry solo work here from 1974. Then followed the same year by Roxy Music's fourth album. This is called Country Life, the fourth Roxy Music album. Again, a provocative cover. The story with this is that these are not even models. These are tourists that were hanging out wherever Roxy Music was recording this music, somewhere tropical, I think. And nipples and pubic hair and all. The LP version of this that I had was censored. It was just this. It was the greenery here and no female figures at all. So when I got the CD replacement of that LP, I was kind of shocked to see this, but in keeping with Roxy's style. This is a fantastic album. All-time classics like Out of the Blue, All I Want Is You. That's a very hard-driving song. Triptych is an amazingly reverent song about the crucifixion, believe it or not. Casanova, Hard as Hard Rock Goes. Really Good Time, a beautiful ballad. And Prairie Rose, a tribute to Bryan Ferry's girlfriend at the time, who was the model Jerry Hall. from Texas. She's from Texas, so this song Prairie Rose is all about her. In fact, here's the lyrics. You can see she's Texas. Oh, that's where I belong. Right, so that's all for Jerry, who left Bryan Ferry for Mick Jagger not long after that. So it goes. There she is, though, on Roxy's 5th album. That is Jerry Hall, done up, I guess, as a mermaid or some kind of mythological character. A siren, of course, duh. Because what's the album called? Siren. Okay. So this is Roxy Music's 5th album from 1975. Has one of their 2 best-known songs, I guess, would be Love is the Drug, and then their other one would be More Than This from Avalon. This is another amazing album produced by Chris Thomas. He worked with them on more than one album, or worked with Ferry anyways. Chris Thomas, a well-known British producer. He also produced the Sex Pistols as well as others, so had a lot of range in the artists that he worked with. But Love is the Drug is this kind of quasi-reggae disco song. End of the Line is practically a country song. A few other fairly, I was going to say straightforward. Nothing Roxy does is straightforward, but more traditional sounding songs in a lot of cases. One of my favorite, again, here is a very deep cut called Just Another High. Ferry sings it with particular passion and emotion. There's not much to these CDs to show, really, besides this cover and the track list. And then I guess what you could call the first phase of Roxy Music's career was closed out with this album. It's called Viva Roxy Music. The live Roxy Music album came out in '76 and included songs from their first 5 albums. After this, they took a hiatus of a couple years and came back in a slightly different form. But this is a great live album. It was recorded in 2 different places, I think. 72 and 74, something like that. Really dynamic sound to the songs. And here we go. It was off there. Okay, so Glasgow in 73, Newcastle 74, London 75. Cool pictures of the backup singers here. They were called the Sirens. There's Thompson on drums. I'm looking for around this time Bryan Ferry used to dress like a matador. No, that's not the outfit. He would dress in also kind of quasi-military gear sometimes. Anyway, Viva. One of the best versions of In Every Dream Home a Heartache is on here. As well as If There Is Something. This is an expanded version by about double from the version that appears on their first album. If There Is Something almost sounds like a medley, but it's a single song with about 3 or 4 distinct parts to it. All right, and then Bryan Ferry continued his solo career by releasing Let's Stick Together. This was from 1976, and the title track is a well-known song. And then this album is interesting because it's got some remakes of Roxy Music songs. So it's Bryan Ferry remaking Roxy Music, covering Roxy Music, including Casanova from the 4th album, Sea Breezes from the 1st, and also 2HB. Chance Meeting was from the 2nd, Remake Remodel from the 1st, and then some other. Oh, there's Jerry Hall too. She's in the video for Let's Stick Together, which I think all these images are from. He had a good band on this too. You see John Wetton there, a famous English musician of Yes and I think King Crimson. on there, as well as Chris Spedding, very well known, and Paul Thompson on drums. Okay, Let's Stick Together. It's followed by In Your Mind, 77. This is one of his weaker albums, I would say. Some of these songs are still great. The title song is Rock of Ages, and In Your Mind, the title song. I think he recorded this, I was going to say LA. No, this is in London. It's got a big list of musicians there that he worked with, including Phil Manzanera from Roxy Music. Okay, so Bryan Ferry's In Your Mind, I give that a B. Everything else gets an A, including this, which gets an A+. This is a Bride Stripped Bare from 78. This one was recorded in the States, in LA, with a lot of American musicians. Hold On, I'm Coming. I think that's a Sam and Dave song. Carrickfergus is an old Irish kind of folk song, I think. What Goes On is a Velvet Underground song. Take Me to the River, an Al Green song, same one covered by the Talking Heads around the same time. The performance and production and musicianship on this album is just amazing, and I love it. I also love this picture of him on the screen looking menacingly here at the model. It looks like he's in a bad mood there too. Okay, so that is The Bride Stripped Bare, and the title there is also a title of a famous Marcel Duchamp piece. So Ferry still, sticking to his roots in the fine arts, making a lot of references all through his career, song lyrics and visuals and so forth, to other artists. All right, and then next up, Manifesto, the reformed Roxy Music. It's from 1979. And this was, sorry, just looking at the tracks here. This was an album that included just 3 of the original members. So there you see, well, actually 4, sorry. Thompson is there as well. So Ferry, Manzanera, and McKay are on there. Gary Tibbs, who I believe played with Adam and the Ants, as well as a couple of other names there. Angel Eyes, in its remixed version, was a huge dance hit. In its original album version, it's more of a rock song, but the dance version is much better. Manifesto is this great kind of creeping song. Sounds a lot like the Talking Heads version of Take Me to the River, come to think of it. Manifesto, 1979. And for this one, this is the only other real artifact that I have. And I showed this in my picture disc video. But it's just the LP version of Manifesto, and you can see that the models have had their clothes removed. So picked this up in a record shop some years ago. I believe it is from the time, because it's pretty kind of beat up looking. All right. Next up was Flesh and Blood from 1980, starting off with a brilliant new wave version of In the Midnight Hour, which is the old Wilson Pickett song. Also an amazing version of 8 Miles High from the Byrds. Every one of these songs is an all-time classic to me. Beautifully performed and produced, as always. Let's see, there's a song on here, Same Old Scene. If you listen to Same Old Scene, you could mistake it for a Duran Duran song. And the title song, Flesh and Blood, it sounds exactly like the Cars. So they have a huge influence on not just those two bands. I've mentioned them both more than once already, but much of what came after all of this was indebted to the Roxy sound. And then the last studio album by Roxy Music is this one. It's Avalon. And it's probably their most successful album. Here's the single, More Than This. Title track also was a big hit. It's a very lushly produced album, has a gorgeous sound to it, a sweeping kind of romantic sound. Really sets a mood right from the start and never lets up. Nick Rhodes, the keyboard player from Duran Duran, got married to the sound of Avalon playing. I know that because I read it in a fan magazine of the time, and I thought that was super cool. That one guy from a band that I loved also loved another band that I loved. Alright, so that's the end of Roxy Music studio albums, although they've reformed throughout the years and released a lot of live albums and whatnot, and still to this day even get together from time to time. But from here on out, it's all Bryan Ferry solo work, including this one, Boys and Girls, from 1985. And there's a poster of this in Ferris Bueller's bedroom. If you look, you don't even have to look too closely. It's pretty prominent. But that's how big this sound was at that time, and how influential. This really continues and really amps up the romanticism of Avalon. And it's Avalon squared, kind of. Here, I'm doing this chronologically, so this compilation came out 1989. And it's Roxy Music and Bryan Ferry, called Street Life, from that great song on their third album. So you can see the same songs I've been talking about. The new one here is Jealous Guy. So, new to the CDs I've shown you anyway. Jealous Guy is a John Lennon song, and Roxy Music recorded it shortly after his death as a tribute. It was a single, and it wasn't put on any albums until this compilation. These are scenes from videos. They're black and white, but scenes from videos for all these songs. And then I just noticed here's a discography which has everything that I've shown you, except for this one called The High Road. That was an EP, a live EP from 1983. And the reason I don't have that on CD is because it was reissued as a full-length CD. The original EP only had 4 songs on it. Can't Let Go from Bryan Ferry's Bride Stripped Bare album. And it had Like a Hurricane's great version of the Neil Young song. My Only Love from Flesh and Blood. And Jealous Guy, an amazing live version of that gorgeous song. And then this is the complete set from France. This is the south of France, recorded in 1982. Heart Still Beating is the name of this compilation. Always with the gorgeous models. Next up is Bête Noire. This album came out in 1987, and I guess maybe I was a little bit of out of order there, but it's okay. He worked with some newer musicians here. Here's a song called The Right Stuff. That's Johnny Marr from the Smiths, the guitar player. Patrick Leonard, yeah, he's the producer and co-writer of some of these songs. He's famous for working with Madonna, I think on her True Blue album. Limbo's a great song from this, and Kiss and Tell. They're all great, though. All right, next up, from 1993. There's quite a hiatus there, but this is Taxi. And this is back to the cover album concept. Amazing, great version of the old blues song, I Put a Spell on You. Will You Love Me Tomorrow, Carole King song, I think. All Tomorrow's Parties, Velvet Underground. Yes, that is Amazing Grace. There's a dance version of the song. Just One Look, made famous by Linda Ronstadt. And on this one also, I think Brian Eno rejoined him for the first time on one or more of these songs. And he's got credits here, and I'm just trying to look through. Photography by Anton Corbin. I just noticed that. That's a classic Corbin shot, who's also done amazing work with Joy Division, Depeche Mode, U2, etc. See the names there, Nick DeVille for art direction. That's a name that appears on many, many Roxy Music and Bryan Ferry albums. So he has a team of artists that he works with all through his career. And I don't see I think maybe it was the next album. I'm giving you wrong information here. If you know Corbin's work, though, you can recognize U2's. This looks just like U2's Achtung Baby album. These images, which came out around the same time. So that's Taxi, and then this is a single of Will You Love Me Tomorrow from Taxi. Yeah, written by Carole King and Jerry Goffin. Crazy Love. That's a Van Morrison song. It's beautifully done here. So a well-worn CD from the day. This is Mamuna. This is the album that features a Brian Eno guest star. 1994 this was. So I think Taxi was kind of a warm-up album, maybe. He hadn't recorded in a few years, and then he got back with his own, writing his own songs, performing his own songs. With Mamuna. There's this is the ticket. This is the first time I saw Bryan Ferry, first of 3 times, at the Aladdin Theater in Las Vegas, December 4th, 1994. He began the show with I Put a Spell on You. Had glitter in his hand, and whoosh, went like this over the audience. Quite a spectacular effect. What I'm looking for, I'll show you some of these pictures. Mamuna is a great song. That's I think it's a name of Arabic origin. It's a woman's name. So the song itself is a beautiful song about a woman named Mamuna. Okay, here we go. Okay. You see the credit here, Brian Eno. He does the Sonics. There's Manzanera there as well. So Sonics, just like he did in Roxy Music, treatments. Kind of mysterious what exactly that means, but it's good enough for these guys. You see other names here too. There's Nile Rodgers on that one, Fonzie Thornton Worked with Bryan Ferry and Roxy Music a lot. So Mamuna there. And this is the single from Mamuna, which I got at the time because of the great live versions of Don't Stop the Dance from the Bête Noire, from Boys and Girls. And then here's another great live version of the old Roxy Music song from their second album, And Every Dream Home a Heartache. And then here's Bête Noire live. All right, then his next album was a little bit of a left turn. This is from 1999. And these are all songs from kind of the jazz age, I guess you'd call them. They're all covers, but they're all very old. I saw him on this tour too. This is 99 at the House of Blues. And it was kind of frustrating because he insisted on doing almost all the songs from this album. And the crowd would listen politely, and he would do like maybe 2 of these songs. They're all usually pretty short ones. But then he would do a Roxy Music or Bryan Ferry song, and the crowd would just go wild. It was really remarkable, the difference in response. I mean, you got to admire someone who wants to pay tribute to artists of the past. I'm showing you the names of the composers here. Somewhere in here there's Cole Porter. Here's Rodgers and Hart. So yeah, there's Cole Porter. Definitely not one of my go-to Bryan Ferry albums. More a curiosity than anything else. And so that's as time goes by. I don't know if you have watched this video from the start or if you're watching it in pieces or fast forwarded it to this point, but it's by far the longest of my videos, and I thank you for staying with me or returning to this point if that's where you are. So after As Time Goes By in 2002, he thankfully got back to releasing albums of his own music. More or less, actually. This is a Bob Dylan song, and so is this. But I think most of these other ones are his own. And Frantic is a very good late career Bryan Ferry album. Hey, and here's the third concert. Okay, so 02. And that's back at the Joint at the Hard Rock. One of these songs is about Marilyn Monroe. That's this one, Goddess of Love. And he wrote this one with Dave Stewart. You can see there from the Eurythmics. Here's Brian Eno on keyboards. So, collaboration, big part of Bryan Ferry's method all through his career. Here's another album, all of Bob Dylan songs, Dylan-esque, all covers, done Bryan Ferry style. This is my own label. Yep, every single one of those, a Bob Dylan song, done Bryan Ferry style, from one living legend tribute to another. And then here is his next release called Olympia from 2010. That's Kate Moss on the cover. Late period Bryan Ferry. A lot of the work that he's done since Avalon is somewhat similar. I don't mean to suggest it's, static or sounding the same, but at the same time there are some things that you can kind of pick up over that time that he does again and again. The atmospherics, the glamour, both visually and sonically, I would say. This is a very good, solid album, as is this. And this is his last album of originally released material up to this point. So this is 2014. Johnny and Mary song made famous by Robert Palmer. And then Send in the Clowns. That's the song. But other songs are his own writing. He's got a credit to Tara Ferry. That's his daughter. In fact, there's a song on Avalon called Tara, and it's a short instrumental song, which must have been written shortly after she was born. Here's Nile Rodgers here on that song. There's Fonzie Thornton again. Johnny Marr again. He did release one album after this. I think the date is around 2017, but it was another album like the As Time Goes By album. That is they're not covers. Actually, what they are, I forget the actual name of the album even, but his very latest release to this date is an old style 30s and 40s music style reworking of old Roxy Music and Bryan Ferry songs. And I remember I listened to it once when it came out and never again. Really just not something I want to hear. So I'm looking forward to more music in the Bryan Ferry mode, although he just recently turned, I think it's 75. So I'm not sure if he's going to continue to release music or enjoy a well-earned retirement. But as you can see, obviously, from the vastness of my collection here, Bryan Ferry is someone who I really admire and have always loved listening to, and to this day consider one of my all-time favorites. So this video is already close to an hour, but I'm gonna go just a little bit further by showing a few more things. All right, and these are the three programs from the Bryan Ferry shows that I went to. So here's the program for Mamuna. Oh, I even wrote the set list. How about that? I remembered. Must have written this the night I got back, but yeah, this is that's his set list, and then it looks like here I've got the review. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so that was from the local newspaper. The suave. Oh, that was his first Vegas show too. Okay, great. He puts some heart into his mannered warble. It's a good description of his sound. All right, and that was a really fun show. Mamuna. The second program is from As Time Goes By. So those are all those old style songs. And then the third one from the Frantic Tour. Remember on this one, I probably don't have a set list. My memory got worse as time went on, but I do remember that he did a great version of Wooly Bully. Might have been the encore. I remember it being very celebratory and everyone just getting up and dancing. Looked like they were having a lot of fun on stage too. And there's the discography there. So programs there. And then here, back before DVDs, I had to get the VCR of the video collection, and these are a combination of Bryan Ferry solo as well as Roxy Music videos. Some extremely dated of their time, and then others less so. I don't watch them too much, really. Certainly don't watch this VCR and at all. But these videos are available everywhere online too. Okay, I'm going to finish off here. With Brian Eno. Eno has become a living legend himself. Known for his production work. I've talked a lot about him in other videos, like with U2 or Talking Heads. The influence that he's had on countless bands, even newer ones like Coldplay. He's also known as a pioneer in the ambient music field, which is something that I've really come to enjoy, really based on him. And I've explored that genre because of the things that I've heard from him. So what I have of his include this, which I think is his, if not his first, is maybe his second solo album from the early 70s, right after he left Roxy Music. And most of them are more traditional pop songs than what he would later do with ambient, but still with a distinct Bryan Ferry quirkiness. So Another Green World is a great kind of introduction to Brian Eno, if you're looking for something kind of weird but not too weird. And he's got a cool voice too, kind of a low voice that he uses in most of his music. And then he went on to do ambient music and is still doing that to this day. His first ambient album was called Music for Airports, which is a great thing to listen to when you're in an airport, if you ever go to an airport ever again. I'm not sure that I will, this being the coronavirus time. But I have listened to that Music for Airports album on earbuds in an airport, and the way that Eno's music kind of blends into whatever sounds you hear in the airport, crowd noise, announcements, people moving around, etc., really creates a unique and very, I found it very a calming experience. That's considered ambient 1, though. This is ambient 2, The Plateau of Mirrors, that he did with the musician Harold Budd. And Eno has worked with Budd a few times in his career, which I'll show you shortly. This is all instrumental. Okay, by ambient, as it applies to Brian Eno, I mean music only, often without any kind of discernible beat. Seems formless, but may or may not in actuality be, depending on how closely you're listening. Ambient has a wide range of sounds too. It's not just elevator music. I think that's the cliche. But this was his third ambient album with a musician named Roxy. And this is from 1980. I forget what instrument Roxy plays. It says all compositions are by Roxy, but it was produced by Eno. Not sure if it's some kind of sitar or guitar or something that he plays. I forget. This is the ambient album I like least, actually, of Eno's. I think because of the sound of that instrument, whatever it is. I find it slightly jarring. Not like the usual kind of synthesizers or keyboard sounds that you would usually hear in Eno's ambient stuff. And then this here is back to Eno himself from 82, ambient 4 on Land. I just mentioned Harold Budd. Here's another collaboration with him and Eno, and also with Daniel Lanois. Eno and Lanois worked together on U2's albums in the mid-80s, Unforgettable Fire and Joshua Tree. Harold Budd is a minimalist piano composer and player. And so this is a very interesting, beautiful ambient album of their work. Here's Harold Budd with the Cocteau Twins. Simon Raymond, Robin Guthrie, and Elizabeth Fraser, members of the English group the Cocteau Twins. So these songs, I don't know if all of them have vocals, but at least half of them do, because Elizabeth is on there, singer for Cocteau Twins. So Harold Budd is definitely worth checking out if you like Brian Eno's ambient work. I think you would like Harold Budd. And then here's Harold Budd's maybe his best known solo album called The White Arcades. Here, number 6 track co-composed with Brian Eno there, the rest of it his own. So The White Arcades, date on that is 1992. Okay, and then Eno and a poet named Rick Holland released this, Drums Between the Bells, in the year 2011. So it's not really ambient, it's ambient sounding music backed up by the words of this poet. It's a nice package. These pictures were taken, or, well, the credit here is that the images are by Eno, original imagery by Brian Eno, and they're kind of fractured, broken up images of the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And a lot of these poems have to do with urban life and technology and whatnot, I think. It's been a while since I've heard this. Actually, I'm going to check this out again. I really like the package. And then I conclude, finally, with, where is it here? Brian Eno Music for Installations. This is a 6 CD set. And installations meaning Eno collaborated with a lot of visual artists. And so by installation, what's meant is an art installation in a museum or other venue. Where it would be kind of a multimedia audio-visual experience. There would be some visual artwork for the audience to enjoy, and with Eno's music in the background. So here's some imagery from those pieces, and he's got good liner notes all the way through here. There's a very young Eno with his hair cut, no feathers on his shoulder there. In recent years, he's just come to look like an aged college professor or something. But these come from all over the world, shows in Russia, London, Kazakhstan, Tokyo, even music for future installations. He's got that here. So this came out in 2018. It's also available on streaming services. I listen to this a lot. This is one of my go-to things to hear when I'm working on the computer. I find music with lyrics often difficult to listen to and work at the same time. When I work, I'm reading and grading papers and whatnot. But Eno, not just this great box set, but also all of his other stuff that I've shown. Are some of the things that I actually listen to the most. Okay, so again, my longest video, maybe by double, but I wanted to get it all in here. So I hope that you enjoyed that, however much of it you watched, and I hope it inspires you to go check out the great work of Roxy Music and Bryan Ferry and Brian Eno, and I threw some David Bowie in there as well. So I'm going to finally sign off here from Neptune. Thank you very much. Click like if you liked it, and I will be back soon.